guys, in this video we'll be looking at a virtual environment. What is a virtual environment in Python? So a virtual environment is a tool for separating side packages used for various Python projects from the main Python environment. So we use virtual environment to separate packages in projects from the main Python environment. So and when we install packages from within the virtual environment, they are always going to be separate from the packages in the main Python environment. So next slide we'll be looking at why do you need a virtual environment? So to prevent multiple versions of the same side packages from confusing the Python interpreter. That's one of the major reasons. So you can't have two versions of the same Python package on your main Python environment. There's going to be trouble if you do. So the second one is to manage your project across different platforms. So you manage your project dependencies across different platforms. What I mean by different platforms is that if you are making use of a virtual environment, you can easily recreate that virtual environment in another platform, in another PC, or let's say you want to deploy your application, you can create it in your Amazon instance or whatever platform you are using. And the last reason why you should be using a virtual environment is it keeps your main Python environment clean with only the packages that are important. So you should not install every kind of packages in your main Python environment, because if you just keep installing onto your main Python environment, if anything goes wrong, you would find it difficult to find it. But if you are making use of virtual environment, you can easily find where the problem is and all of that. So in the next slide we can look at this diagram showcasing like how a Python virtual environment looks like. So we have our main Python environment, and this diagram has two virtual environments inside. So the first thing you would notice is that there's a copy of the Python binaries represented by the black and the white Python text. So there's a copy of Python binaries inside each virtual environment, and they have their packages inside of them. So if you notice, in the main Python environment we have Django, we have a lower version of Django installed, and in one of the virtual environments we have a Django 4.1.6. so two different versions of Django. If we were to install this Django 4.1.6 on our main Python environment, both of the two different versions would not work anymore. That is one of the reasons why we make use of virtual environment. So that's all the slides. So I'm going to show you how to create a Python virtual environment in Visual Studio Code. Okay, let's see how to create a virtual environment with Visual Studio Code. So I have a blank folder open in my Visual Studio Code called Flask app. So we're going to be creating a mini web application as an example. So I'm going to first show us that I'm going to run pip freeze to show us the packages that I have installed in my main Python environment. So these are packages that I installed in my main Python environment. So I'm going to create a virtual environment. So to create it, I'll type python -m for module, then the venv module, then the name of my virtual environment, the name of the folder. So this is going to create a folder structure with the virtual environment files. So we have the pyvenv file that has the Python binary that was used, the path to the Python binary that was used to create the virtual environment. Inside the bin folder, we have the copy of our Python, the package manager, and the script for activating it. Then we have the libraries where that's going to contain all the package that we install. So I'm going to create a app.py because we want to create a mini web app. So I'm going to say from Flask. We are going to import Flask. Then I'll say app equals to Flask underscore name, just normal. Then app.route. So this is not a Flask tutorial, so we are just using this to test our virtual environment. So I'm going to say hello, and I'll return hello Flask. Then I'll say if name equal to main, I'm going to run app.run. So so we can see that everything we have a Flask application, but we also have a virtual environment that we've just created, but we haven't activated it. So to activate it, I'm going to run source venv/bin/activate. So source venv bin/activate. So we want to call that script. If you are using Windows, this bin would be scripts and not bin, but for Linux, Mac, use bin. So once you press enter, the virtual environment is activated. And to be sure, I can run pip freeze, and you see that we don't have anything installed in our virtual environment. But I can do pip install Flask, and I'm going to install Flask in our virtual environment. So now that I've installed Flask, you can see that the Visual Studio Code is still making some errors, like it hasn't seen Flask yet. So we're going to select our virtual environment folder with Visual Studio Code. So the first thing you do is to press Command-Shift-P to bring out the option. Then you can browse, select Python, select interpreter. So once this option pops up, you click on the select interpreter, then just use the recommended. Once you've created so you can see that this is the venv that we just created. This is the path to the copy of the Python binaries. So when I select it, you can see that it's working fine. So but before we can actually run a Flask application, we have to make we have to export. So we can run our Flask application now. So we're gonna do Flask run, and it's going to run, and we can test it. You can test it in your browser, but since I'm a professional developer, I don't need to use my browser to test it. So I'll just do HTTP localhost 5000, and you can see hello Flask. So that's what's coming out of it. So once I quit the server now, and let's say deactivate the virtual environment, because using just type in deactivate, and the virtual environment will be deactivated. So deactivate. So once I deactivate the virtual environment, if I type in Flask run, we're going to say command not found, because we are no longer inside of that virtual environment. So this is how to work with virtual environment in Python. So before I go, I'll show you one important thing to know is how to manage your project dependencies. Let's say you want to push your app to Amazon Web Service. So I'm going to activate the virtual environment again. I'm going to activate so VNV bin /activate. So now we have this our mini web app, and we have all the packages installed. So I can do pip freeze and requirements.txt to save all my project dependencies inside of this file. So because you can't take this virtual env to the server, so when I'm creating a new virtual environment, I can just use this file and do pip install r requirement.txt and to install every package that is inside. So that's how you copy a virtual environment in another system. So thank you very much for watching this